Welcome to the first episode of The Experience. I'm Andrew, and today we're going to be just doing our first video. This is a podcast where we just talk about everything and all things. We're not going to limit it to one subject, we're not going to limit it to, one topic. It's just bang, bang, getting things done, talking about what's important, what's on the agenda, what's on the mind, and we're going to have a great number of guests on here too, so we're going to have some good enthusiasm about this. This is going to be a fun show. And to kick things off, I just want to get right into why I started this quarantine. I listened to the Joe Rogan podcast for about 5 minutes before I decided, you know what, I should just do this myself. I don't think there's a reason to keep listening and seeing how I can better mine from another podcast. I just wanted to go give it a shot and start. So that's what we're doing right now, an unbroken, straight narrative talk. We're just going to go talk about all things quarantine. Uh, but not that. That's just a part of it. Most of what I have to talk about today is movies. I love movies. That's one of the biggest things I want to be mentioning on here. I never want to exclude a topic, but I also want to make sure I include many topics and not give others prevalence over, sports or what's going on in the news. I just want to keep everyone informed and talk about what's big and what you think is important, and that's what we're going to do. That was kind of a standard introduction. We're going to do away with that now and get into the fun part of the show because that's what this is all about. So, my guest for later today is Sam Cacioppo, and he is just an awesome all around guy, one of my good friends growing up, and he is just the perfect person to kick this show off with. We have a lot in common, and some of our viewpoints that we'll discuss, we can just reflect on those and see if you guys agree. So let's talk first about how many days we've been in quarantine. For me personally, this is day 50, day 51. I've been here since March 9th. His Girl Friday. That's the last movie I saw, I guess, in my class. And then I stopped having class. I go to college in the city, School of Visual Arts. One of my favorite classes there is the film history class. It's big on the fifth floor. It's a large auditorium. My professor makes the class. He's an English guy named Paul Cronin, and he always is very intimidating when he speaks. He kind of makes you feel like he's British, and because he has this accent when he talks about his movies, it makes you feel you almost don't know as much. You'll say 1917, that's a good movie. He'll say it's a terrible bloody film, terrible. Jojo Rabbit, that's decent. Oh, fucking awful. Ford vs Ferrari, god awful. Hates all the Star Wars. You can't mention a movie. Dark Knight, he'll shut it down. So that's just Paul Cronin for you. But the class is good because of these provocative discussions. I think in his class I've learned more than in any other class, just as far as what you're going to get out of a film. We had a teacher, Chris Newman, come in, and he spoke to us for about 40 minutes. It was one of the best 40-minute monologues I've ever heard. Just an 80-year-old man. This guy's won 3 Oscars, by the way, for The French Connection, Amadeus, and The English Patient. I don't know about Amadeus, but he definitely worked on The English Patient and The Exorcist. Doesn't like talking about it. Doesn't like talking about Billy Friedkin. And that was just an interesting part of listening to Chris Newman speak about sound design. He really knows what he's talking about, and he really gets into the nitty gritty of it. So Paul Cronin totally respects him. Paul actually was a kid in London, and he came over here, I think in '89, and he just said when he first saw the Cassavetes films on VHS, that's what told him about being a great filmmaker. Looking into people's past is something that's really helped me along the way of making movies. When you look in how people started and how people got their influences and how that motivated them to make their craft, it shows where their perspective is and where their influence came from. Chris Newman speaks about be the squirrel that has your nuts before the winter. You don't want to not get work done. He says find a job, find work, all this. It's just it's the perspective of a sound engineer. He's a sound engineer, Chris. I didn't mention that. And he's done sound in all these films, and he says he gets up the crack of dawn, and then he goes home, his last one home. But he sounds like he's proud of his career. That's what he was trying to get out of our discussion when he came to speak to us 40 minutes of Paul's class. Just do what you got to do in life. Sometimes you're not going to like it, but you got to work your way up the ladder. You can't ever give up. You can't ever stop or say, I don't want to do this. You know, I'm too lazy for it. No, just keep pushing yourself. That was Chris's message. And I loved Paul's class for that reason. He would have spontaneous discussions, like with Chris Newman coming in and Chris Newman speaking to us. That was one of them. Other times, we just go off of film syllabus. The first time I showed up at Paul's class, and again, I'm going to get back to his girl Friday. I'm going to get back to my last day of class before quarantine, but we're just going to discuss the film class. He has a syllabus. Every week, it's a different film. They started off with experimental shorts. We'd watched Cleo from 5 to 7, shorts of Andrea Arnold, a Lynn Ramsey short, some Carl Dreyer experimental discussions, and we talk about early film, Battleship, Potemkin, all that early film stuff. And then from that, we move on to Wasp, move on to more modern films. I have the full list right here. This is from my fall semester. He has a whole list of rules, which is hilarious. Commandments, and most of these are never really followed because he just doesn't have the time to enforce them. One time a girl was on her phone and he hurled it across the room and said, I'll give it to any student if you don't fess up to who you are. And the student did not fess up, and I think he was very shocked. Eventually she did, with some quiet Asian girl with a mask on, and she took it and went quietly back to her seat. But I think that just kind of showed that if you don't stand up for yourself, and he was just pointing this out, that no, you can just have everything taken from you. He was pointing it out. Here are his commandments in his classroom. There's 13 of them. Thou shalt never be late for class. Thou shalt never let the door slam. Thou shalt never talk during screenings or when the teacher or teaching assistant is talking to the class. Thou shalt never use electronic devices during the screenings or when the teacher or teaching assistant is talking to the class. Thou shalt never eat in room 502, broken that rule many times. Thou shalt never leave room 502 while a screening is taking place. Thou shalt never complain when, if any of the rules are breached, you are asked to remove yourself permanently from this class. That was if any of the above rules are breached. Again, that's never happened. I've always wondered if that would happen. Thou shalt tell the teacher when he is being boring or stupid. Know the most useful educational experiences come from challenging everything you see and hear. You are an adult and will be treated as one. Film is an extraordinarily powerful medium. Has there been a better time to be doing this? Good point. Process, not product. Breadth over depth. Circumstances forces me to conclude that you understand what is written in this syllabus. He is just a guy who likes getting everything out there. He's a very interesting guy, Paul. One of the most unique teachers at SVA. He wrote a long, about 4 pages about how he doesn't want to be watching our student films. He doesn't want us taking bathroom breaks. And he just is very strict in his syllabus. But if you see him in person, the guy is so fun. He's so loose. He likes to just talk. Most of our conversations, he always says, just come from us just pitching ideas and going at it. We'll talk about random topics, though. I mean, kids in our class have nothing to really say but Tiger King and Cats, the movie. So yeah, Cats. That's what we really just talk about. We had a whole discussion on it. Our teacher's assistant, Anna, in our spring semester, she is pretty cool, and we've been talking through Zoom recently, and she always gives full analyses of these movies. Cats, she went on for about, I don't know, 40 minutes just talking about what it meant, why James Corden's character is offensive. I mean, these are in-depth. They're not really that, crappy half-assed theories. She's just stating facts, and it's entertaining to listen to, at the least, when you have nothing else to do. So let's look at our first semester films. We were watching Workers Leaving the Factory, Arrival of a Train Late at the Station, Trip to the Moon. This is only on the first day. Great Train Robbery. We ended up just watching The Great Train Robbery, Gasman, Wasp, Fish Tank, La Jetée, Playtime, Mon Oncle. I did not see La Jetée, and I really wish I did because I actually just watched it a couple days ago. It's on YouTube or Vimeo, and I had no idea it inspired 12 Monkeys. I knew 12 Monkeys was based on a story. I forgot it was legit, but when you figure that out, it kind of just strikes a chord. Ah, that's what you say. You said, I wish I could see Legit. I wish I could see it in theaters because that's the experience of seeing a movie in this class. You see it on a big screen. You're in this auditorium. It's a small auditorium, but it's really nice and cool. And I've had so many memories watching movies on that screen. I watched Alice. I watched part of the Fantastic Four and some episodes of The Simpsons. I remember just going there in between classes and watching movies. It's a lot of fun. I also watched Savages. No, not Savages. That's the Laura Linney, Philip Seymour Hoffman one. I'm thinking of Carnage, which stars not the upcoming Cletus Cassidy, Woody Harrelson movie, no, the one with John C. Reilly, Kate Winslet, Jodie Foster, and Christoph Waltz. That is a good movie to see in this theater. I saw just by myself, and this kid Stephen Chen asleep, Asian kid. He went to sleep in there. There's a lot of Asian kids at my school. I just say that because I'm going to be mentioning who these kids are, the demographic. Paul was actually out for a week when we watched Playtime and Mon Oncle. He didn't think Playtime would play well. I remember him saying these movies won't play well, and he is right about that. I actually did really love the experience watching Playtime. I mean, watching it, sitting through this movie, and I'll admit I sat through it on my iPad. What I'm recording with now is what I sat through a movie watching. And here's another tangent. David Lynch once said, I can't stand watching a movie on your fucking phone. Get real. If you think you saw a movie on an iPhone, get fucking lost. So I honestly had a totally different mentality after I watched that. Unless it's a short film, I watched Ari Aster's Beau the last day of October after seeing one of his movies in my class. And I just always had the idea that, I've watched so many movies on my iPad. I've watched City of God. I've watched Good Time, which I'm about to talk about in a second. But my point is, I think that if you experience something on an iPad or you watch something for the first time, it doesn't really matter. I watched Playtime for the first time on my iPad, and it didn't matter at all. It was a great movie. I loved it. In fact, I felt more immersed. There's a great Roger Ebert quote. When you look up at in a movie screen, the theater, that movie is like God. You're looking up to it. When you're looking at it on a tablet, you're looking down to it. He compared it to the television medium because before iPhones became so prevalent, it was the television. He was saying watching TV is more casual. There's less of a immersive feeling to it. And he is right in that regard. However, if you are to sit and concentrate on a movie, sometimes I'll even find myself slumping down in my chair like this. Just, to try and make the movie bigger than me. It's something that you can do. It's not really a difficult thing to do. It's just you have to be able to concentrate. I've found my concentration lapsing over the years. I'm distracted. I have my phone. I'm constantly on my phone every time I want to watch a movie. It's awful. It's one of those things you just want to have concentration. You want to be able to put your phone away, put on a good movie, and think I have nothing else to do. I've tried deleting social media. That's really hard. YouTube's always a must. Snapchat's not a must at all, and Instagram is certainly not a must. Just a habit. It's a habit to post movie reviews and seek attention on there, but it's not something I want to keep doing because I'd rather try to be productive. I view movie watching as being productive. You're going to sit through a movie without being on your phone, and you're going to sit and take it in. You're putting yourself into the film. You're putting yourself into it, and it requires a lot more effort than most movie watching and most things that are just go for casual hobbies like TV, like watching an episode of Friends, because that is more casual, and I find myself doing that all the time. I'll put on The Big Bang Theory, put on South Park, but that's also comfort television, and there is a reason you can just get into that, and I think it's fun, and I can't knock that stuff because I do it all the time, and I find it to be very relaxing. So we'll save that for later, and let's go back to talking about why just Paul's class and why it's so great. Because again, I was saying playtime. Just sit, immerse yourself in a movie. He said, "I don't think you'd be able to concentrate on this," so we didn't watch it. We instead watched Good Time. Rebel Without a Cause was on the syllabus, and Paul said that won't play well. And I actually agreed. I'd seen Rebel Without a Cause in ninth grade, and allowing myself to sit and watch it without being on my phone once really made me think this is a very weird, outdated film. And I was able to judge it very properly because I had been completely unhindered by any form of phone, social media. At the time, I was in ninth grade. That's when I feel I had my most strong concentration. I had the most strong concentration zone. So, Rebel Without a Cause, I watched, and I remember Dennis Hopper was in it, James Dean, and I just went to it for that excitement. And even when it wasn't that great, you still got a lot out of it. The beautiful sets, the mansions in the Hollywood Hills, the really weird music that would play when they were in the planetarium, and just the ending, which kind of came out of nowhere. I got the bullets! It doesn't even come out of nowhere, it's just the insanity of it that doesn't feel really leveled with the rest of the movie. I'm not here to review Rebel Without a Cause. I'm just here to say why I see it not clicking with today's audience. There's no climax. Movies like that, it can just be very relaxing. People are just walking around in suits and ties, mumbling to themselves the whole movie, and then at the end there's a huge action sequence like Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and it just goes full Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that's what this film did. We watched Do the Right Thing, but I actually got to leave class. Paul said, "You don't have to stay for this." And I was really happy about that. I did not want to watch Do the Right Thing again. I saw that when I was in the Hamptons. When I went to see, I saw Train Spotting the day before, and I'd also seen movies like Minority Report for the first time, Get Shorty, which I distinctly remember not paying attention to. That's one that I must have just been distracted because I was on my phone and I was not fully paying attention to the plot. And it's just one of those films you remember something like that because you want to be able to stay in the zone. When you're doing anything, you want to be able to stay in the zone. And that's something I remember being on my bed. I had my large silver laptop with me. This was before I switched to the iPad. And I just was not concentrating. I finished my screenplay the next day, so I was distracted with that. For Halloween, we watched Rosemary's Baby, but the teacher was not there. Paul was not there because he had an emergency in London, and we also had Rear Window showing, and no one stayed for that. I'd say about 10 or 20 people out of the entire 70 person's class, because Paul said, if you want to go, you can go. Everyone chose to get up. I chose to get up. I've seen Rear Window. I should have stayed and watched it, to be honest. It would have been an experience. I even saw the old-timey logo coming on screen. I think it was Warner Brothers. I just remember when you see a logo like that so crisp in the Technicolor fashion, it's beautiful. So yeah, they watched that, and then we didn't watch Rosemary's Baby because Paul was in London dealing with a crisis. So Matt Trapasso takes over. Matt is a young kid. He's in his 20s. He is a really fun talking kid. He's handsome. He's got brown hair, probably like my hair. I mean, he seems intelligent. A person who seems intelligent when they come in with pants, sweater. It's just that look. And I feel like maybe that's just my generation because the suit and tie is the professional look. But when you're a kid now, you don't really want to go all for that, or else you could just seem like a total. You actually do seem very intelligent if you wear a suit and tie. I was just going to say it's very indulgent to go out, and that is the sense now. I think people try to go more casual. They try to wear just a black sweater. Look at Tom Cruise in every single interview. It's like he's been ahead of the curve with that. So Matt just wears that. He is a very cool sounding guy. He told us by the time he worked on a Steven Spielberg film, West Side Story. And West Side Story, they've actually been filming since I was in high school. That's something I took into film school as soon as I went starting. Every single movie that I'd ever watched or had heard of, Paul seemed to know or seemed to say, "Have you heard of this? Have you seen this?" And I had, and I did mention some of them. Sorcerer, movies like movies like Cleo from 5 to 7 and Lars von Trier films and The Kingdom and David Lynch films like Wild at Heart. All this weird cinema I had seen, especially Good Time. I was really happy when he put that on because instead of Rebel Without a Cause, Paul said, "We're going to watch Good Time. I think you'll all enjoy this more." I remember there's a girl named Leanne next to me who hadn't seen the film. I said, "Have you seen this?" She said, "I haven't seen this." And she was next to me, and I don't think she was nervous. She's a filmmaker, she's an artist. A lot of kids in that class will either go hide into their shells and really show it, say, "I'm scared, this is bothering me, oh, that was so tense, I'd rather watch SpongeBob or Tiger King." We have kids like that who just admit it openly, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're openly just saying, "I'm uncomfortable with this," or, "This is too advanced for me." And then you have girls like Leanne who just sit there kind of taking it in as it's art. The first time I took in Good Time, I was really amazed. I just thought it was an emotional story, and it had an adrenaline pumping plot and soundtrack, and the Safdies really knew how to handle their camera. I was lucky because Uncut Gems was coming out, and I actually was going to go that week to see the premiere. It was coming out as the secret screening of the Thursday Thursday at the New York Film Festival, and I landed tickets that morning, and it was wonderful. I remember even being in Temple at my service, my Yom Kippur service, and I just was so happy. This was September 29th, I think, on a Monday, and I was texting my friend David saying, "Do you want to go see Uncut Gems with me? I got tickets to go see it in New York at Lincoln Center," and he was saying, I'll get back to you." This is how David is. He's a kid I just met recently at SVA. He didn't end up going. I asked my friend Marcus. He was down to go, and we went. We had a great time. I remember actually having to take a piss during the film, physically at the screening, while Kevin Garnett was speaking, while the Safdies were speaking, while Adam Sandler was speaking. And I was just sitting in this really tightly packed auditorium watching Uncut Gems. I just had to piss, and the movie started, and I think that hindered my view of the film, honestly. People say the movie gives them anxiety or it's really nerve wracking. I think actually it just enhances that nerve wracking ability. It's not a movie that is gonna really just freak you out or make your heart pump out of your chest. It's just something that if you're like that, if you let that get to you, it can happen. It didn't happen for me though. I prefer Good Time. I saw Good Time that Monday. After Yom Kippur, I went into the city, watched it, and I liked it a lot again. I'd already seen it. So, yeah, Matt came and he took over for Paul's class, and when he took over, he just started telling us all about his relationship working with the Safdie brothers and how he worked at a rental house, how he worked in New York City, and how he rented cameras. And he even said, "Josh Safdie called me up the other day, and he said I needed to rent something." There's a theory, but I was guessing that it's for his Goldman versus Silverman short because they shot that in New York City, I'm guessing, while doing promotional activity with Adam Sandler. They could have shot it before. It's just a guess. They just wanted a camera to mess around with. But anyway, Matt made the point of saying that the Safdies were coming and they rented a camera from him. And what's funny about Matt is he just is a really confident guy, um, and he'll always put on a good movie. But I think he never really, sells it to the class. He'll always say it's a great movie, which it is, but he never sells it. We watched Long Goodbye first time, and he actually did a pretty good job explaining it. What he did was he gave us a whole lecture on Paul Thomas Anderson. I did a report on Paul Thomas Anderson, but this all came from Matt. Matt really inspired me with the way he approached research and the way he approached writing about PTA. I thought he's an interesting guy. He's an artist. He's worked and he's made so many movies that are great, like Phantom Thread, The Master, Boogie Nights. I mean, I could just talk about Paul Thomas Anderson, but Matt got that and he showed us a lecture just saying he's the modern who you want to be. And the Safdies actually get that. I mean, they hired Sandler for their movie Uncut Gems, and it shows. They did an interview, and it was posted on A24. Of all places, it's heaven for people who love movies. A24 interviewed the Safdies and interviewed Paul Thomas Anderson, and they just did a Q&A together. It was great. It just shows the two collaborative minds, or three collaborative minds. So we watched The Long Goodbye, and we compared it to movies like Boogie Nights, and this was Matt's idea. It's like, let's just watch The Long Goodbye and see what people think of it. And I don't think it clicked with a lot of people. I really liked it. I'd actually already seen it the previous August. I watched it going into senior year while I worked at the movie theater. I just remember it was on my phone. That's a movie I watched on my phone. I think specifically on my phone, not even my iPad. Like as small as you can get. I watched it on this screen, and not even this one, a smaller one. That movie is a really good film. It's got great camera quality, a really fuzzy lens. It's old, so it has that old timey feel to it. When you watch a movie, you'll know what I mean. Just the intrinsic nature of the soft camera. It's great. So we watched The Long Goodbye, and we discussed what the stoner paranoid detective film was. And we talked about Inherent Vice, Under the Silver Lake. These are all films we can talk about on separate occasions, but he made all these comparisons, Matt. And Matt was just talking about the film and his love for it, blah, blah, blah. Next week we watched Boogie Nights, and that was something I really remember. I've seen Boogie Nights, I think I saw it 3 years ago from the point of watching it. Yeah, because I saw it in 2016, then I saw it in 2019. So it really did a number on me seeing it again. I mean, I love that movie. That was one of those films that inspired me. I saw it before I saw Magnolia, or around the same time, and I just thought they were both great. Magnolia stuck with me a little more though, but Boogie Nights has just been always that movie with great music. And it's just something you remember when you think about it, and I think that's why Matt showed it to us. I was surprised by the number of people who hadn't seen it, but it really made my week watching that. Another movie I rewatched was The Tree of Life, which I could talk about all these films. Tree of Life is just one rewatching really helped me. I did not like it at first, and then the experimental nature of it caught on to me. I think it was edited by like 5 or 6 different people, and that shows, that pays off, because it's got so much cinematography and so much direction. I mean, David Lynch edited Inland Empire himself because he didn't think other people could handle it, but the fact that Malick could get 6 editors to assemble his film, and everything about him is very ambitious. Trey Edward Schultz, who's a great filmmaker, worked on Terrence Malick's movies. He now makes movies like Krisha, It Comes at Night, and Waves. But he got a start as a camera loader on Terrence Malick's films, Voyage of Time and The Tree of Life. And that's just a cool tidbit because Malick is really cool. High and Low and Eight and a Half are both movies. I don't know if we watched Eight and a Half, but I was not there for High and Low. I think I left. I wish I stayed because I saw that, another one I saw about a week or two before, and I just didn't have I just didn't want to see it. I really wish I saw it in theaters, man. That's something that sticks with you, and I'm glad I'm talking about it now because it's as little and as silly of a regret that is to have seen a movie in theaters. It really does stick kind of with you. You know, why didn't I sit and just stay for 2.5 hours? It wouldn't make a difference in the long run, and I would have gotten the experience of seeing it on the big screen. I think about that with The Last Temptation of Christ sometimes, because getting back to quarantine, everything is shut. And in August, before school really began and I was at orientation, I looked up Last Temptation of Christ, which was playing in a theater on 23rd Street where I go to school, and I was thinking about asking someone to go see it with me, but I didn't. And that's a regret I have. It mainly is the movie, believe it or not, but also the fact that I didn't take this opportunity to ask someone out. And that's something that I want to mention because I think you should always take these shots, especially now in the quarantine. I'm looking at Wayne Gretzky. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Well, now, Wayne, I can't take any shots. So, yes, it's a virtue. And I'm really, you're a wise man, and I wish I'd listened. And it's just something you can't really look at the past or hindsight. You have to go move on in the future. You have to say, how can you be better? Or how can you have a good time? Well, here's the answer to that. You can do that by watching Last Temptation of Christ on a big screen. Watch it in the basement. Watch with a large group of people. I actually will be honest. I prefer seeing a movie by myself. If I'm seeing a film like Furious 7, Captain America Civil War, I prefer to go to the movies by myself. I thought about asking someone to see Last Temptation of Christ because it's 3 hours, it's in the city, and I was just there and I'd met someone and she was attractive, so why not? But I do usually prefer seeing films solo. I think that actually helps the experience. When I first saw Captain America Civil War, I asked my friend Brett to go see it with me, Brett Varco. And he's just a kid I knew at school. He's not a really great friend or anything. This was the end of ninth grade. I'd known him for a little while, I'd say just about over a year. And I said, meet me at the theater. And again, ninth grade, May 1st or whatever. He said, I'll meet you, but he never came. And he even texted me saying I couldn't get a ride. It was something really bullshitty and dumb, and I didn't expect him to come. It's one of those kids you just don't expect to come. And then when I got to the theater, there was a whole demonstration of mothers. There were boards and setups of food, and people had marketing and advertisements and billboards out that were showing their businesses, and all these women were talking. They had drinks and trays of food, and there were bagels and chips and little sandwiches and cups with water in them. There had to be wine, but the entire lobby was packed, and it was very weird seeing a film. I think it was also Cinco de Mayo because I remember going to eat Spanish food the next day. But also, I just remember that movie came out around Cinco de Mayo. Anyway, you see a movie by yourself, it really just adds to the experience. That's something I remember. I think I remembered seeing it by myself, and it wouldn't have been the same if I didn't. I also saw Rogue Nation, Mission Impossible movie by myself, and that was more immersive because of that. After the lights went up, I saw a pack of 5 kids who I knew, and I probably would have sat with them if I'd known they were in that theater with me. It was a Saturday at 8:30 in September when I saw Rogue Nation, and this was in 2015. But these are just all times I've gone by myself that it's been great. Another time it hasn't been great, or a time it hasn't, was when I saw the BFG, which was just a boring, forgettable kids movie that I went to saying, it's Steven Spielberg. How could this be a failure? But it turned out it was a complete failure, and I completely regret seeing that. I saw The Post, his movie that came out the following year, and that was equally dull. And Bridge of Spies had come out before. Bridge of Spies was decent. When you compare a movie like that to a movie like the BFG and a movie like The Post, it's a lot better because at least it has thrills and tension and great production design. Post has decent production design and casting, and really everything is just so boring and so panned out. Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to talking about um, watching movies and the experience of it and how you have to just sit. I mean, yeah, I think that yeah, seeing a movie by yourself can just make the experience that much more immersive. I'll keep using that word. But let's mention movies that aren't as immersive. A movie like that would be, well, what's a more recent? Oh, 42 Meters Deep. That was terrible. 40 Meters Down. Just an awful film. I can't even remember the title. There was a sequel called Uncaged that was also pretty terrible. These are just films that come out and they're awful. I remember even as a kid saying, I can make a good shark movie. I've always wanted to see a good shark movie like Jaws, but there has not been many. I mean, I could be wrong. I probably am missing one or two hidden gems out there, but they're very hard to find. They're almost never, you know, there. Anyway, I'm looking right now for his syllabus from Paul's class, try and show you the rest for this semester because it's very relevant to what we're discussing. The movies I saw in Paul's class, um, and they're just very, very unique films. And we didn't watch all of them, so it's worth talking about. He has the commandments listed here as well. This is a separate file on Canvas. I should feel like I should show you how Canvas works. Basically, this is it. This is the messages they give you right here. Teachers, he messages you all the time on here. You can even see there's all these messages from Paul and his class. And that's our syllabus. That's what I'm reading off of. It's a very long list. Hell or High Water, I wasn't there for that, and I'm glad I wasn't there for that because I had already seen it. Under the Skin, I left class and I watched Zardoz instead. And I really want to rewatch Zardoz because Sean Connery's in a loincloth. And that's what my teacher advertised the film as saying, is James Bond in a loincloth. So I watched it. I really liked Deliverance, but this was bizarre. I mean, just in terms of, it was out there, but I really wished I saw that in a theater because I watched it on my phone. And that makes a difference. I watched it in the library on my phone. Under the Skin. Yeah, didn't see it. I actually had seen it the previous week. And I think that's the reason I didn't want to see it in Paul's class, because I'd seen it the previous week and I knew what it really was. It was slow, it was methodical, but the ending got to me. I didn't know it was going to end like that. And I liked it. I thought it was really cool and minimalist and fun. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was the other choice for that day, but we didn't watch it. Whatever. The Lives of Others. The Lives of Others I didn't see. We watched Frownland instead, which is a really weird choice because Paul said, I know many of you haven't heard of this, and I hadn't, but it was a great film. Totally changed my perspective on what you could call a film. This was Ronald Bronstein's first movie, and I highly recommend everyone check it out. Frownland. It's great, and it talks about really everything, just about social anxiety and being in New York City. It's a lot of interesting topics kind of meshed into one ugly movie. It's a good type of ugly, though. I like it. It's funny, people didn't like this, and now I see why I like it, because it's very weird and disturbing and out there, and if the masses don't like it, I love it, apparently. Blood Simple and Double Indemnity. Two, I didn't see. I didn't see Double Indemnity, and I didn't see Blood Simple. And instead, both of those we watched Blow Up by Michael Antonioni, and I gotta say right now, I have not seen Blowout, the Brian De Palma film, but I'm adding that to my list of movies to watch because, yeah, Brian De Palma, John Travolta, why not? I'm into any film that is noir or crime. I watched Thief and I didn't think that was that great, but that is a movie I thought I would like. And, you kind of get these and you think, oh, maybe I like it. Maybe I think I would, but you don't end up liking it. So we watched Punch Drunk Love in our next week. And that was good. It's funny, he has it labeled as a romantic comedy Valentine's Day special. Let's talk about that for a sec. I didn't think this was a great romantic comedy. He goes on to name every single Gary Marshall movie and says these are all the terrible rom-coms. I mean, in all fairness, they are the kind of drab, cheap ones with the terrible posters that have been copied to death, white backgrounds with two people back to back on it. Like, we're complete opposites, but we're going to hook up by the end of the film. So I get why he doesn't like those and why he prefer Punch Drunk Love. I actually really love Punch Drunk Love, and after watching it that time, I fell back in love with it. I think I gained a greater appreciation than I first had. And then I showed it to my dad, and I was really happy to watch it with my dad. We watched Girl Chewing Gum, apparently Bread, Land of Silence and Darkness. Now, we didn't watch those. These are just on the syllabus. The Thin Blue Line, The Gleaners and I, all films I would have liked to see and I hadn't seen, but we watched part one of Los Angeles Plays Itself, which I've fucking seen. That's such a Paul thing to do. Show a movie that I say, wait, I've seen this, let's not watch it. But he says, I think you'd all get a kick out of it. So I stayed. I do like that film though because it's really interesting and it has a ton of copyrighted information. But that actually, I saw it in January and I said, hey, you can make movies like this where you just basically take clips and you have to have a really good essay and voice narration, but you can do this. I even started thinking this could be my thesis project or senior project and something to consider. That's a great movie. It's so dense. That's as dense as they come. Los Angeles Plays Itself with documentaries. Let's see what else is on the syllabus. This is where we stopped. The next week was Drunken Master 2, What's Up Doc, and His Girl Friday. We watched His Girl Friday, and I remember I had seen, I'd say, the first 20 minutes before I went to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I only watched it because it was on Quentin Tarantino's list of his favorite movies, and I wasn't able to pay attention to it. I have this attention span deficiency that I'm not making excuses for. There's no excuse for it. It's just me not being able to concentrate. It's discipline, but I ended up eventually watching it. I saw the play this was based on, His Girl Friday, which is called The Front Page. And The Front Page is actually featured as a special on the Criterion Edition, which we watched in class on March 9th. So, talking about watching His Girl Friday, it was just a fun movie. And the day we watched this was actually day, the day that Max von Sydow died. Before I say anything about Max von Sydow, I just want to say we watched Vive sa vie, which is directed by Jean-Luc Godard, because the main actress in that film died the day before we watched it. That was Anna Karina. And I remember my teacher even saying, we're not going to watch La Haine, which he'd been hyping up. We're going to watch this Anna Karina movie. And we watched it, and I thought it was interesting. It was told, it was kind of meta, and it had these title cards that said what was going to happen. But yeah, I liked it. I watched A Woman Under the Influence too the week before in Paul's class, and changed me. It didn't change me, just same way Los Angeles Plays Itself and Frownland hit, that movie really did a number. We talked about Hoop Dreams too, and career opportunities, and just naming films, but Paul even seemed to be passionate about me watching career opportunities and Hoop Dreams in the same day. I said, Frank Wally and Jennifer Connelly, what else can you say? And he was just saying, Frank, he was just into it. He knew Wally and Connelly. So, yeah, His Girl Friday is just, it's not something I really appreciate. There's some little humor in there, but I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I don't resonate with the whole film. I have to rewatch it. I will definitely rewatch it and pick things in there that I like. But look at a movie like Only Angels Have Wings, which I did see. It's also directed by Howard Hawks. It came out a year before and starred Cary Grant. And it was more fun to me because it was an adventure film. This is a screwball comedy. And the other one, while it had elements of a screwball film, was mainly an adventure. It was fun. It was very dated, but it still had excellent technical effects. So there's a reason I liked it a lot more. His Girl Friday, I really liked The Front Page. I mean, we got to see about 5 minutes of it, but when I saw the actual Broadway show with my dad, and I met Chris McDonald, and I saw John Slattery, and I saw Nathan Lane and John Goodman up there, I thought that these are wonderful performers. They were so good. It looked like, I mean, I was waiting as soon as the play was over. I was sitting in the very back to get out there. I went right by the stage door, but none of the main three guys came out. That's just a side story with My Girl Friday. Well, if we're going to talk about my film class, we can just talk about what we were going to do the week after My Girl Friday, or His Girl Friday. We were going to watch 127 Hours, Children of Men after that, Cleo from 5 to 7 after that, West Side Story after that, Into the Woods, Yellow Submarine, American in Paris, yada yada yada. Paul even said we could watch Cats instead of one of the musicals, which would have been great. Wouldn't it have been great if we'd watched Cats instead of Into the Woods? Because why would he want to show us Into the Woods? Really? Why? I don't see that as a Paul Cronin film. I mean, look, Yellow Submarine and American in Paris, West Side Story is common, but still, it's listed as 152 minutes. Is it really that long? Maybe Spielberg just said, I'll make it shorter. And by the way, while I'm on this, before I get into what we're going to watch next, very, very annoyed Spielberg has dropped out of directing Indiana Jones 5. This isn't the main discussion for it. We can talk about it in James Mangold another time. I think James Mangold is great, but I think that it was a really prolonged and frustrating decision to make because we knew Spielberg wasn't going to do it. He kept pushing Indiana Jones back. Why would he want to direct a fifth movie to a film that already had a really poorly received fourth one? Well, at least in the long run, by fans. Critics at the time did not hate it. I never really hated it. I did always just agree they were milking the franchise, and this is clearly milking the franchise. We'll see what they end up doing with it, but I would love to see Spielberg behind the wheel. I don't want to have to watch this movie with freaking Ansel Elgort and Rachel Zegler because it's West Side Story, and that's fun, but we've already seen this. Make something new. And we're going to discuss this, but even Martin Scorsese um, is on the side of just make something new, but he's still in the. We'll talk about this later with Martin Scorsese and his Marvel films. Um, anyway, we didn't really get into what I was going to watch next week. Yeah, 127 Hours, but then I said, because Max von Sydow passed away, we should watch Flash Gordon for Superhero Week. And Paul said, I'm sold. I was so hyped to see that. Hadn't seen Flash Gordon, hadn't seen it on a big screen or anything. I had seen parts of it, but I never really paid attention to it. That's another problem. I watched it later in my high school life when I really just started becoming more distracted. That's when I became distracted. I'd say 10th grade. You just start realizing there's other things to immerse yourselves with. And it is a problem. It is a problem to break away from the movies. You want to kind of just stay focused. But that's why it's better to do it in the theater. It's better to watch a movie in the theater. I think you have a better chance of staying on there. Anyway, we didn't do Flash Gordon because of what happened with the pandemic. Now I'll discuss that. March 9th, I took the train home, and I remember being very careful. I didn't eat anything. I mean, I must have brought a sandwich with me, but I didn't go to buy any food. I mean, my class started at 9 and ended at 11:50. I take a 7:14, 7:18 train into the city. I'm in by 8:14, and then I just get to class and watch the movie and head back. It is a pretty long grind if you think about it. I've gotten to think about it more over the years, but I mean, it's been about a year, but I haven't really had any horrible weather to deal with, only some snow and, yeah, I guess wind. It's really never been that terrible for me, so I can't complain. But we had some really warm weather too, and it was just nice to kind of film. I was filming the construction workers as they were outside, and then after this, I realized I couldn't go back into the city. My parents wouldn't let me. I went in one other time with my mom to return equipment, and even then, everyone was out of the city. It was very surreal seeing that all. Everyone had left. So, how did the pandemic start for me? Well, I really rewatched a lot of movies with my family once this thing first started and quarantine kind of became mandated. I watched Ron, and I really appreciated it. I think that was the first movie I watched in quarantine. I didn't even know we were going to be in it because I watched it the night film I was done with Paul's class. Next day, I didn't go to class, and class was still on. I watched Valley Girl at home, and that's something I want to rewatch because I liked it. But I even remember that I even remember that with Valley Girl, they're remaking it, and it's just going to be totally different. I just like to see it for the first time again. I watched Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, The Running Man, all in one day. The Running Man, I didn't really think was that great. Empire of the Sun, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and Onward. I saw that in theaters. I mean, these are all going to get their individual reviews, but Onward, seeing that in theaters was quite a memory. Bizarre too, because I took these two kids I sit to see that, and they hated it. They were bored. They were talking so loud the whole time. So we actually went to the back row. There's a very large theater. We were in theater one for this, and yeah, I took them to see that, and I remember no one was there. That was the last film I saw in a movie theater. March 9th, His Girl Friday, then March 13th, the last movie I actually saw in a physical theater, and then that became shut down the next weekend. So I slowly realized I was going to be stuck at home. I stopped babysitting actually the following day. After the theater was closed, she just stopped texting me. And recently I did get a text saying you could help out over the summer, and I figured I could because you have to go out eventually. You can't live in quarantine forever. But let's talk about that. Why did this start, and when did it become so stigmatized? Well, in the United States, in March, it became really a big deal. People had known about it since February, but it was obviously being downplayed by the government. And now we're being told to inject ourselves with Lysol and bleach, which honestly just sounds insane to be hearing from the president. Just saying. We watched a lot of movies. We watched the Simpsons movie, Us, Basketball, and I rewatched Playtime. That I distinctly remember actually watching it and just feeling like I'd seen it. Frenzy, the Alfred Hitchcock movie, I didn't really watch it. I wanted to say I did, but I just wasn't paying attention to it. Now You See Him, Now You Don't. That's a movie starring Kurt Russell, and it's basically The Invisible Man, but for babies. It's rated G. I love those movies. That I started watching over quarantine, and I just really started watching a lot of movies and television. I mean, I think that's why Tiger King became so big, right? Because it's I was about to say crazy, but that word's become so overused. I think it's just very unique to well documented reality TV. And it also has some interesting plots about murder and turns in the story. It's not by any means groundbreaking because let's be real. I watched it and I wasn't watching this and saying, oh my god, I'm praising this. This is the best show ever. No, but I did think it was kind of a fun show. I never thought it was, boring or went out there. I watched Patriot games too, just pointing that out, and rewatched There's Something About Mary. Those are both fun. Those both keep you energetic. That's what Tiger King is. It has that palpability that it keeps you going. It's not a show that I would, put on if I really want to learn something. Like, I mean, that's the face I put on when I want to watch anything. Is how can I learn from Tiger King? But I mean, you necessarily don't have to. So it makes a movie or show better if you actually pay attention and go into it with the expectations of learning or getting something out of it. That's at least how I feel when I watch a movie or TV show. There's a difference in absurd and the just straight up clever comedy. And I actually want to put, a dash between those two. My Cousin Vinny and Adventures in Babysitting. Let's talk about those two. You might be saying, Andrew, those are two very random films to bring up, but I actually did recently see both of them, so I think it's fair to talk about both of them in their capacity. Adventures in Babysitting in the capacity of a 90s fun romp with slapstick comedy, and My Cousin Vinny with clever, albeit tedious, home viewing trademarks. I also pulled that from an Ebert quote because Ebert is one of the best. I love Roger Ebert, love his honest reviews. A film critic is a dime a dozen, but having a great sense of writing and articulating, um, that's something you want to look for. It's words. It's the way you say something. It shapes. If you when you read, you pick up on words and you think of your own consciousness and your own memories of those words. And that's why Ebert is so great when he writes, because he is able to evoke such a personal feeling, and it's almost always very relatable. And that's just what I took out of my review for My Cousin Vinny, because I watched it and I felt exactly what he had said, which was it wasn't, you weren't laughing your ass off the whole time, but there are several great beats in this film, and enough of them that it feels pretty astutely clever and pretty fun and breezy. This is a 2-hour movie, but it does go by and it doesn't feel like you're sitting there waiting. Some movies do feel like that. There's a movie, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, that I recently watched. And the difference is it's not a goofy comedy. In fact, that movie tricks you. It pulls the rug out from beneath the cover within the first 10 minutes or 20 minutes when you find out that I'm not going to spoil anything by saying the babysitter dies, but after that happens, the film takes an immediate detour into a girl's high school fashion movie. And it's something unexpected. I don't think my sister even liked it, but it's something that is meant for girls. It's meant to target them. I think if I'd watched it by myself, maybe I would have even liked it more, because when you watch something with your family, this is what I was saying before about seeing something by yourself. You feel you're inclined to their views almost. I mean, I felt as if you're watching it with them. My dad even said halfway through the movie, "No one finds this funny," which is true. If you compare it to the other one, Adventures in Babysitting, that had more laughs. That had more goofy slapstick zaniness that I think will get people to laugh at it. But it's intentional too. It's not a comedy that is based in for teenagers, or based in that sense of excitement and tension for girls. Stephen Herrick directed Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, and he clearly was trying to do what a film like Heathers did, and have a sense of style and grace with the camera. But again, you don't need that. I just think the absurd comedy is justified, is what I'm saying. I think you can have very fun movies nowadays and make them work if you have great actors, you have funny jokes, and you do it right. Look at a movie like Blockers. That was very fun. I would actually call that absurd because of the amount of sex jokes and random humor that goes into it. Ike Barinholtz and John Cena chugging vodka up his ass. That seems pretty absurd. Even the movie Neighbors, a fair recent batch of Zac Efron films, have been pretty funny and absurd. Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. That was a blast. I saw that with a friend, and that made it better. Spy, a movie I saw by myself, and it was not made better. But I could see why it was funny. I mean, there are some movies that are so sharp, you can tell why they're received well, or why they're get good reviews. Spy, there's such a long story behind that. I bought 2 tickets to see it, had my dad buy me tickets. I went to go see it later that night, and I just went by myself because Sam couldn't go, and my friend Matt couldn't go. And I remember Sam even mentioning that Melissa McCarthy drove the Pope Mobile. I mean, he had seen trailers for it, he knew what it was, but we didn't go see it. Sam ended up going to see The Boss, the Melissa McCarthy movie, and I didn't see that with him. I remember I was in a fight or something. We have such a long history of doing this. We're neighbors, we're friends, so it'll be great to get him on. We can even maybe talk about it. But with him, we've seen a lot of good comedies together. Um, yeah, just speaking about the movies like Spy. I mean that's a fun film. These are all fun movies, and yeah, just the absurd comedy is so it's not common anymore. You're not going to get movies that are as crazy because comedy's laced in superhero films now. You don't see movies that are like Alexander and the No Good Horrible Bad Day. That's an adaptation of a book. You don't see movies like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That's also an adaptation of a book because they're either adaptations. They're not original. There's a movie called Game Night that was original and it was frequently funny and frequently clever. I mean, there was a tracking shot that when I saw that, I just said, okay, okay, you're a good comedy. You didn't need a show off, but you're good. Okay? B plus, leave me alone. Game Night was very fun, and it has this really exciting sense of intelligence about it that you don't get from many films. So I liked it a lot. Now, yeah, you just get superhero films now. I mean, Black Panther was playing in the same time as Game Night, and that also has a lot of comedy. So think about it: a movie like Black Panther will make way more money than Game Night, and that's why you have movies like Black Panther playing. And with that, let's get back into the main discussion: quarantine. How is that affecting movies? Um, well, how hasn't it affected movies? I mean, look at last February. What was playing? Captain Marvel came out in March. That took over, quickly surging to millions and millions of dollars worldwide. Look at the February before that. It was Black Panther, Game Night, Peter Rabbit, all these small movies being dominated by the Marvel films. So Onward came out, and that's owned by Disney, who also owns Marvel, and that made nothing. Again, I told you I saw that, and there were about 5 families in total, including me and these kids I sit for. So that's like 4 to 10 other people in the theater. Not that many people at all. And this is the largest theater in the entire building. They were making it large for social distancing. And at the time, they had just unveiled new Fast and Furious posters. And I remember even saying, because they'd just been unveiled, I said to my friend who worked at the theater, "Are you gonna, be showing movies for that much longer because of COVID?" That got delayed. He had no idea. My friend Brian, he was like, I don't know, man. So they didn't know, and now everything is being affected. So we should pull up a list of what has been affected and see if it's most likely to change. Because here's the thing: at the rate we're going at now, you could start going outside soon. I think there's no harm in trying to, you know, not go to the store, not shake hands, but I think at some point you have to make contact or you have to just go back to life as usual. It's like something my dad always said with terrorism, because that's actually a sadly prevalent in today's society. It is. There aren't anyone gathering in public. So if you look at it, March was actually the first month in what, like 10 years without any school shootings, and that depends how you categorize that. But it is because no one was in a public place. Same with terrorism. So the theory with that is, if you let that fear get to you, that fear of terrorism and that fear of being um, taken over by this thing that you have no control against, then you're going to let that win. And that's honestly the same mentality with this. Clearly, we are developing vaccines. We are developing ways to fight it, fight the virus, and not by injecting yourself with Lysol. But there's ways being developed. And at the same time, I think people are growing to a point where they can stay home by themselves. Someone once said the biggest world's problems come from man not being able to sit in a room by himself. And that's very true in this case. We should all take this opportunity to look how we can better ourselves. I mean, there's so many ways I can do that, and I'm sure there's so many ways everyone else can. But it's just something you have to look at. How can you do this without affecting other people? How can you be the best person you can be? So we're looking at changed release dates now, and for movies, and No Time to Die is probably the um, biggest one, because it went from April 3rd to November 25th, and with April, that's a large slot, and then November is a big Christmas slot. But I actually prefer that one. I don't know why April was so big and why. I mean, it's spring. It's you're going into the spring break, so you have that. But I just think November feels more Bondish, and I'm very happy it went with that instead of April 3rd. Disney moved a lot of its stuff. We'll talk about that. But I just think that, you know, what came out last? Skyfall, Spectre did, but Skyfall came out in November. Spectre came out in November, and now No Time to Die. I'd be very annoyed if they moved it to April 2021. But that's slowly growing likely because you're seeing if theaters remain closed and if this mentality stays, we have to stay indoors. They're not going to. They might not open theaters for a while. I think you could slowly open them, but you'll see that this is a very dead year. Everything is being pulled. The one movie that hasn't been pulled, Chris Nolan's Tenet, and Chris Nolan, who's saving the movie industry one film at a time, could be the guy to just release a film and we all see it in July. It could be the only 2020 movie. It could win Best Picture. It could get all that and just come out mid July and make nothing. And then hopefully Warner Brothers would reimburse, Nolan, make more films for him because he's like Stanley Kubrick. They just have him on contract. Whatever he'll make, they'll make it because he's keeping these masterpieces coming. I mean, that's what you can call them, right? They're masterpieces. I hate using that word, but they're just usually very, very out there and unique. I mean, look at Inception, look at Interstellar, even his Dark Knight trilogy is unlike anything we've seen with Batman. The last Batman film, mainstream, was Batman and Robin, and Chris Nolan made it gritty. My teacher who hated The Dark Knight pointed out, yeah, the dialogue is very simplistic, but honestly, what do you want from that film? It's catering to a huge audience, and it does so in a great way. It feels like you're watching HBO without any of the fucks. It's just, these are my hungry dogs, they want to eat. So, it's a lot of cliche stuff, but Chris Nolan is saving the movie industry. Hopefully, if Tenet comes out, and I didn't see the first 6 minutes, I was dying to see the first 6 minutes when it came out with Rise of the Skywalker, because it also makes references to the um, hostage crisis in Moscow, and that's something very, very interesting. I would love to see put on film. There's been lots of historical incidents in other countries that are never discussed in American television or film, and Chris Nolan is always alluding to them. That's why he's one of the best. So I'm hoping that with his next film, he's going to just blow our minds, something we haven't seen before. Because all we got with Tenet was a couple shots of a car flipping backwards. It looks insane. That's called marketing. If you're a guy like Nolan, and he started from a movie like Doodlebug. His movie was a black and white short about a guy in a room with a who's a bug, and he's just squashing himself with a shoe, or running around with a shoe, trying to squash himself, and it's him. It's such a Nolan thing, and it's only 2 minutes, and I think it was shot for $2,000, which seems like a lot, but that's really nothing. Just as a student, it seems like a lot, especially for the concept he had. It's a really cool concept. And then he ended up making Memento, which was a really hard film to make, but that's something that I got him launched. I mean, if you look at that film, it shows you how this got him to be so big, because that required a lot of skill as an editor, as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, and to get your cast to be able to pull that off. I mean, think about it. Guy Pearce is one of the least memorable actors, at least in my opinion. When I think of any Christopher Nolan movie, I don't think of Guy Pearce, but he worked with him. And that movie's completely available for free on YouTube, by the way, which is very shocking. I watched that for the first time in 10th grade, the very beginning of 10th grade, along with Insomnia. And they both stood out to me as being chilling and cold, unlike Nolan's films are usually fun and have this sense of espionage. But I didn't really get that with those. I mean, they were chilling and they were slick, but they were, more gritty and cool and steely. So, yeah, if he releases Tenet, Let's hope it makes money. I will totally go see it. Let's hope theaters are open because, I mean, we need an excuse to go to the movies. What other movie to open the theater with than Christopher Nolan's Tenet? 20th Century Studios, they dropped the Fox, and it's so sad because I only think of them as 20th Century Fox, but Disney bought Fox, so that's gone. Disney owns every Fox product. It's really weird. Well, they've moved their movie Free Guy from July 4th to December 11th. I don't know if you guys use Screen Rant. I use them a lot. They have very short articles, and again, I mentioned my attention span, but that's not a good thing. I don't think the short articles are good. I think they're actually very lazy and they don't give you enough information. That's just a small criticism. There's a Bob's Burger film that was supposed to come out on July 17th, but is now coming out in April 2021. That seems like a safe bet, moving everything to 2021. The Fast and Furious were the first films to do that, and that was a really smart move. To go right to. They went from May of this year to April, and that was smart because it's May now and theaters are not open. Mulan has been moved to July 24th. Maybe Disney will take a bet with Mulan. I doubt it. I mean, they only care about making money, so I doubt they would release a film in theaters. But imagine you just have Tenet and Mulan. I mean, that's like a double feature choice. What are you going to see? Go see the really fun theatrical experience from Warner Brothers, or go see this Disney kids movie that's probably not for kids because they're trying to make it adult and about war and no music, which is just Disney for you. Okay, so Jungle Cruise, that also moved. That moved from July 24th of this year all the way a year till next year because Disney had that slot open. And I'm not complaining. I mean, theaters are closed. I'm not going to go see Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt on a boat. I mean, I just don't need to see it. Indiana Jones 5 has been pushed back to July 9th, 2021. When was that supposed to come out? Because, I mean, I don't really remember when it was supposed to come out. French Dispatch is coming out 3 months late, October 16th. We'll even see if that comes out. It seems many things may be pushed back. The Eternals was moved February 12th, 2021. Shang-Chi to May 7th, 21. Doctor Strange 2 has been moved to November, and Thor to February of 2022. Oh, and Doctor Strange was recently moved again. I think the entire MCU is going to be affected. It isn't really a terrible thing because they have so many movies in the works. They have so many films and directors who are making these movies for them that it's not really a problem. But what's annoying about it is that you're just going to have to wait for so long to see these things. I mean, I don't necessarily need to go see Doctor Strange 2, but I'd rather see it in a fun summer release date like May or a nice, cool November evening. Then, I don't know, going on a February night, it feels so weird. I can't picture that in my head. It's like you're forcing yourself to go see a movie because you have to keep up with the system, and that's what the Marvel Cinematic Universe has become. Captain Marvel came out barely a month before Endgame, and it felt so weird. Just that post-credit scene of her. You could do a whole episode about this, but it felt weird. So this whole rescheduling has affected everyone. It's not just me, and it's not just these movies. It's the whole schedule. Black Widow was supposed to come out May 1st, but now it's coming out November. We'll even see if it comes out November. I am very satisfied with a November 2020 release, though, because Black Widow's been in the MCU for 10 years. And it's a nice tribute, especially after starring, really, in Avengers 2012. And now, 8 years later, here's her solo film, 10 years after her debut in Iron Man 2. We could talk about all these films and how they've been affected, and there's a lot more to even discuss. But I'd like to get to the interview segment. We have some really great guests, and it's just going to be a blast. So thank you for tuning in, and we're now going to go to Sam.